Good morning, everyone, and happy Wednesday. It is the last month of the year, and I believe it's almost over. 2026 is literally around the corner, and we know it's also around the corner the holidays. And with holidays, if you haven't been in claims, you know that this season is settlement season. And what better way to start off with claims topic than having a risk manager and an SIU company talking about how they use their strategies to tackle claims, and my favorite part, lowering down premiums. So we have two very special guests today. We have Miss Tanya from Vallarta Supermarkets and Chris from Strike Investigations. So if you could go ahead, Miss Tanya, and introduce yourselves to the audience, what you do, and your experience.
Thank you, Rocio, for having me. My name is Tanya Matulowicz. I am the risk manager for Vallarta Supermarkets. I've been with Vallarta for about 10 years. And before then, I was doing claims for another, I'm not going to tell you how long because I'm not going to date myself, but it's been a long time. And I've been in, workers' comp is my field, and it's been a long ride. So, like I said, work comp is the field that I'm in. So, ask away. Thank you.
Awesome. And then, Mr. Chris, if you could briefly introduce yourself to the audience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to be here. Thanks, Rocio. Chris Gutierrez, CEO of Strike National Investigations. We're contracted SIU within the insurance industry. My background briefly is a combination of law enforcement and SIU. So I grew up in the law enforcement community. I was that 12-year-old going after school to my local cadet program. And then at 18, I got hired by my local police department, did some stuff there, eventually went to the private side and started working for some carriers in their SIU department. And then I did some time with the National Insurance Crime Bureau in LA with the LA Major Medical Fraud Task Force. So I was basically investigating fraud rings, doctors, attorneys, body shops, and just a bunch of people colluding with each other to defraud the insurance company for thousands and millions of dollars. And then I decided to get licensed as a private investigator, and then Strike was born. And we're here several years later. So, super excited to be here. It's definitely always a trending topic. It's something that impacts everybody in the country. Insurance premiums and insurance fraud can put employers out of business too. So, it's definitely something to put an ear towards. So, yeah, excited about this conversation and excited to be here with both of you.
Yes, and what I love about both of you guys is you guys are very passionate in both your areas, and that's why you guys are the experts. So today it's really just highlighting both of you guys' perspectives on claims management and how SIU investigations helps out. So I'm gonna go ahead and start off with the first question for Miss Tanya, and I want to know, how does SIU complement risk management from your perspective?
Really, it is a collaborative approach. That's kind of the way we look at it. It is between the adjuster, SIU, the employer, and sometimes also the defense attorney. It is a team effort. The way it's approached. We all work together to get because we all have the same goal, which is to gather the intel to help us defend the case. Um, when we have red flags, that's when if we know that we have foul play, of course. That's the first thing that we need to know is that's when I, at least for me, I will that's when I know that I have to reach out to my in this case it would be Strike. I would reach out to them and I would say I need a background check. I need and if the background check um uh comes out with information, then that's the first step. And then that comes that gives you the first clue that you're going to need surveillance, and that puts, the sort of kind of the wheels in motion. So then, of course, and that gives the adjuster the first the green light to start the process. And so, and at that point, that information all goes to the defense attorney. And like I said, it is a team effort, and it's for all of us to stay tuned, together in that in that loop together.
100%. And then, Chris, with your perspective, how does SIU help out with the claims cost?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to echo a little bit of what Tanya said, and I totally agree. The fraud fighting side of insurance claims is a team sport. You do need to have everybody on board that it's involved in that claim to be able to maneuver it as strategically and as efficiently as possible. That includes having your claims adjuster, the employer, the broker, right? You're kind of leaving yourself out of the equation on this one, Rocio, but the broker is very important as well. Like the broker being able to have knowledge with this kind of information and being able to push the rest of the team, kind of being that quarterback so that everybody can get together. And then obviously the SIU provider jumping in and being able to contribute as well. I have seen in claim reviews where different entities handle it differently. You got entity A that would simply, hey, we have some questions on this claim, send it to the SIU department. Let's see what comes back, and then send it to the attorney. The attorney sends it back, send it to the risk manager, and they're sending it to each other, but there's a disconnect. And the more you're sending it to each other, you start seeing this like spider web thing being drawn out. The more and more it starts circling, and spider webs are very complicated, right? At some point, you don't even know where the lines are going. I've seen entity B over here sit down on a call and get the attorney, get the SIU provider, get the risk manager, get the broker, get the adjuster on the call, and everybody's on that same call, roundtabling the same claim or the same claims and putting all the minds together and getting the different perspectives. And in my opinion, that's the approach that tends to work out the best for everybody. Everybody gets the information that they need up front. Everybody agrees to certain action plans, and just it avoids delays, and it maximizes the return. So to sum it up, it is crucial. SIU being involved in direct communication with the employer, the broker, and everybody else. That's really, in my opinion, one of the big contributing factors that makes a difference, and being able to get results. And I wish more people practiced it in the industry.
Yeah, you're 100% right about getting everybody on the same page. There's nothing more frustrating than sending email requests to different parties, and it takes them a 1 to 2 weeks to respond, and then there's a follow-up on that follow-up. And at the end of the day, for me as a broker, I'm representing the client, and the client's just getting more frustrated as medical bills are being racked up. And especially when it comes to cases where legit this person is not hurt, they're working somewhere else, or it's one of our favorites, which is the retaliation claim, because
Mhm.
things went south, so now they're doing it. And majority of the time, I'm sure, as you guys have experienced, people that do these type of claims have a history of doing it in the past. So I get this question a lot from employers: is how do you deal with claims when someone has done that same back injury with the past two carriers?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it comes up very often. So one, we have to keep in mind that even if somebody has been convicted of fraud or they have been flagged for potential fraud in the past, that doesn't necessarily bar them from coverage in a present claim, unless there's proof that they're doing the same here, right? And I'll address this first because that's where I see a lot. I see it often in the industry where those lines will start becoming blur, and it's like, well, they've been convicted of fraud before. Or, hey, this is this. They've been having similar claims in the past. This definitely grants, denying this claim here. And while we don't have to prove beyond reasonable doubt that yes, in fact, is the same duplicate claim, we need to only prove it based on a preponderance of evidence, meaning just tilting the scale a little bit, right, with that feather, to be able to support that denial or that affirmative stance on the claim. It is still important to do your due diligence because there is something in the insurance industry called bad faith, right? Where you can get sued if you're not handling a claim fairly, timely, and legally as well. And that bad faith lawsuit can put you out of policy limits. Where if you have a $1 million policy and now you committed bad faith and bad faith is proved against you in court, say bye bye to that 1 million policy limit. Now you can look at 5, 10, 15, those nuclear verdicts, and that is not pretty, right? And so oftentimes the best thing to do upfront when dealing with a situation like that is engage your SIU provider, start doing your due diligence, start doing a very thorough background, start grabbing the records from those prior claims that were filed. And even, if this SIU provider has, good relationships and they know how to maneuver things in the industry, like a 791 request where we can send, a letter to another carrier and exchange information under the insurance code 791 for the purpose of protecting our client against fraud, then it helps ease that process much more efficiently rather than subpoenaing everything. And then that subpoena is going to take some time and then it's going to go to legal and then it's going to take months, right? And sometimes we don't have months, we have a couple of days. Maybe luckily we'll have, a couple of weeks. So, one, do a very thorough due diligence to verify if there is overlapping in those pre existing claims or prior claims. And two, if you do identify that there is overlap, then roundtable it with your team. Grab the risk manager, grab the claims broker, grab the attorney, the adjuster, and then roundtable it as a team and say, okay, team, this is what we got. We have a person that is alleging, I'm just going to give an example, a right arm injury, and we have a claim from 3 years ago where they alleged a right arm injury as well. It looks to be the same injury, but we can't say conclusively with high certainty that is the exact injury. So what we'll do is, hey, attorney, go and subpoena records from these facilities. Hey, SIU, we'll go and we'll grab the records from the carrier. Hey, adjuster, go ahead and send a delay notice, right? So we can have an extra 90 days to investigate. And then everybody's on the same page. Hey, employer, maybe you can identify some witnesses or some people that work closely with this person so that we can talk to them and maybe handle it from an AOE COE perspective so that we can talk to those witnesses and identify, hey, did you ever see them complaining about their arm? Did they ever mention to you that that was a condition that they had in the past? And then now, once you grab all that information, you come together again as a team. And now everybody has all the pieces that they grab. You put the puzzle together. And now, with high certainty, you can say, you know what? Yes, we are dealing with the same injury, or with high confidence, we can say is the same injury. Now we can take an affirmative decision on this claim. We can deny it or we can do whatever needs to be done and take it from there. So it really is just like Natalia said, Tanya said from the beginning, it really is just handling as a team sport and having that continuous conversations through the life of the claim to make sure that, everybody's on the same page.
And a lot of the times you will find that before they have the idea of filing a claim, they will be talking to the coworkers. And this is just in regular conversation.
Yeah.
They'll be talking, to them about, whatever they did over the weekend or whatever is going on, in their regular lives. And so that's when, it comes up in conversation that they have a pain or they have something that happened a long time ago, or that something that, is an accident or something that they've been going to the doctor for some time, or whichever the case might be. And that's when, things happen that, that will come up in conversation. And that's when, it's really, really important that if these other employees come up to you and they come and say, we heard this from so and so, you know, documentation is extremely important. Extremely, extremely important. Document, document, document. For risk management, documentation is as important as it is in HR. It is incredibly important.
It's
That's just a quick.
everything. Yeah, yeah, it's everything. And I will mention this. We have to remember that workers' comp is administrative law, right? And
Correct.
administrative
Correct.
requires extensive documentation. So really is the lifeline of the claim. You need to have extensive documentation. We have this rule of thumb around here in the investigation world that we have this saying: if it's not in the report, it never happened, because that's how deep the documentation needs to be. If it's not in the report, it didn't happen, and if it did happen, it better be in the report. Like, it better be documented.
Right.
It's the same thing for everybody in the process: the risk manager, the claims adjuster, everybody. It's documentation over documentation over documentation. It's better to have a big pile of documents and only need that last paper than needing a big pile and you only have a paper, right?
Correct.
It's not a pretty position to be in, and you know this,
Correct.
Tanya, right?
Yeah, no, you guys both bring in a really good point about that, and we actually got a comment right now. I think what he tried to say is like, what's a bad faith example? So I think he's just saying like, what's an example of a bad faith claim?
Bad faith, yeah. Um, so bad faith is, in essence, it can get a little complicated and very specific. But bad faith, basically, I'm gonna explain what good faith is, and then kind of parlay that into bad faith. So every insurer that is underwriting or administrating claims has a responsibility to handle claims in good faith, meaning handling claims timely, handling claims fairly, and not basically denying a claim simply because I just don't like you as a person, right? You kind of give me the feeling that you're a fraudster, and so I'm just going to deny the claim for that. That would be bad faith. And so, as claims professionals, we have to be operating in good faith. We have to be handling things neutrally, and even from our perspective as an SIU provider, when we get involved in a claim and there's high concerns and high suspicions that somebody's potentially, committing fraud, or there's some elements of fraud present, we still have to kind of cover our eyes and ears when it comes to that and see it from a neutral perspective. Let the evidence show us what we need to see, not us trying to come up with the evidence that will help us see what we want to see, right? It's not what we want to see, it's what the evidence is going to show us. And when you handle it that way, for the most part, almost always, you're going to remain within that good faith parameter. You're going to remain fair. You're going to remain neutral, and you're going to remain objective. Bad faith is when you start crossing those lines, and now, maybe intentionally not paying a claim, even though you should accept it based on the facts that you gather. But you're like, you know what? I'm just not gonna pay it right now. Like, I'm just gonna delay it. Or, yeah, you know what? I know I do need to send them, to that medical provider. I do need to approve these bills, but I'm just not going to because I don't like that person. That's bad faith. And there's a lot of things that can happen in an investigation as well that can start contributing to a bad faith lawsuit. Such as, like, even in surveillance, if you're following somebody and then the person becomes aware, or you believe that they start showing signs that they are aware of the surveillance, that's one of the things that you should immediately just disengage. And at a later time, maybe, different investigator, different car, different circumstances. But when you decide to still stay and you decide to still follow it and you decide to make it very obvious and you decide to now intimidate them through this process, like, yes, I'm following you and I'm going to continue doing that to intimidate you, now it becomes, it crosses a line, right? Where even though we as an SIU provider can do surveillance legally, is that ethical, right? And now you potentially have even additional claims that can arise against you, like a psychiatric claim. And so it's just knowing those things, knowing where the lines are, knowing what is, what contributes to crossing that line, what contributes to protecting that line, and just having that deep understanding of good faith, bad faith, so that ultimately you can help your clients. As a service provider, you can help your clients be able to make affirmative, objective decisions that are going to protect their best interests over time, and not put them in a situation where you're going down the pipeline and they're going to, and then the carrier's going to, and everybody's going down the pipeline. That's not fun. Right?
Yeah, that's never a fun thing. And Tanya, have you ever experienced a bad SIU situation where maybe you hired a company or you worked with a company and it just didn't turn out the way you wanted it to turn out?
Yeah, unfortunately, I did. I had a case that was really, really expensive. It turned out to be a couple of $1 million.
Wow.
Um, and unfortunately, at the very beginning of the case, we had him under surveillance. He was being followed, and for some strange reason, he picked up on the fact that he was being followed, and um, I guess he was parked in a parking lot, and it was just incredible that his wife picked up on the fact that that the investigator was parked behind him, and then she was just absolutely, she just went berserk. And she called the attorney, and she was like screaming at the attorney, saying that they were being followed. And it was just, yeah, it needless to say, from that point forward, the case just became very, very difficult, even more difficult than what it already was. And that just kind of, we got burned. Essentially, we got burned at that point. And so we had to lay low for a while, for a long while. And then it was just a really difficult situation with that case. And like I said, we settled just like I think last year, and
Wow.
it was a mill. So yeah, it was a bad case.
Not a pretty situation.
No, no.
I'll add a little bit, since we're talking about surveillance, and like right before going, I can dork out about surveillance, so I'm gonna keep it like concise. But we're talking about luck in surveillance, and
Mhm.
strategically planning. So it, the reality in the surveillance world is that anytime that you're following somebody, there's a chance that they might become aware that they're being followed, right?
Mhm. Yes.
There are some people that are super hyper vigilant, and they will exit their home and immediately turn and see a car that does not belong there. Why? Because they have lived in the same neighborhood for 20 years, and all of a sudden now there's a car that they have never seen in the past, so it's going to
Right.
grab their attention. And
Mhm.
there are other people that you could be right next to their window and they will never notice you. So there's complete sides of the spectrum, but it all comes down to ultimately being strategic in the way the surveillance is being planned. Not a one size fits all for every single claim, just like not the same jacket will fit all of us, right? There's a reason why there's different sizes when we go shop for clothes, because different sizes apply to different people. And that's okay. And you should go shop around and you should find the clothes that fits you. It's the same thing when it comes to programs like this. You have to really assess the facts and the intricacies of that particular claim, so that you see what type of jacket fits this claim, and if we even need to tailor it a little bit so that it can fit better. That may even be not doing traditional surveillance up front on the file, and maybe if the layout permits, doing unmanned surveillance, where we'll put a remote camera and we'll monitor the residents for a couple of days to see the behavior of this person, to see if they're coming out with like golf attire, to see if when they are coming out they're looking around like this and they're super hyper vigilant. Now we get to learn them for a couple of days with unmanned surveillance, which by the way, it's like a penny to a dollar. when it comes to regular surveillance. And then once you actually learn them and you pick up that behavioral pattern, then you pair that up with traditional surveillance. You go out and now you already know, you know what, this person steps out at 9:30 in the morning and somehow they go and do something and they come back at 4 p.m. And that has happened over the last 3, 4 days. Now we know that we need to send an investigator, and they need to be aware that this person's going to leave around 9:30 in the morning and they're going to be out for a couple of hours, so be ready to document them during that period of time. We have found a lot of success when pairing those two together, um, and ultimately being able to achieve results. And again, you're gonna follow somebody, and there's a 1 out of 20 chance that they might start becoming a little hyper vigilant during the surveillance. That's where the training and experience of the investigator really matters a lot. How are they going to treat that situation so that they prevent the there's the suspicions of the claimant from rising and give them reassurance that you're not being followed.
Mhm.
And the way you do that as an investigator, I realize that there might even be some applicant attorneys that might watch this. So I'm going to keep it very intentionally vague for that. Uh, but there's certain tactics and certain maneuvers that you can perform while you're on surveillance to basically test if somebody is aware that you're following them. And an experienced investigator will perform these tactics and these maneuvers occasionally during the day while performing surveillance, because even if you think they're not aware of you, you should still perform them so you can test them. You're kind of testing the claimant. Do you know that I'm here? Do you know that I'm here? Do you know that I'm here? And once you see a claimant that completely clueless, okay, you don't, and then you're continuing the surveillance. And then during that test, consider it like an audit of, recognizing whether this person is aware of you. Once you're doing, several days, and now they start reacting differently, or they start, reacting to certain maneuvers that you do, then you start kind of getting that suspicion yourself as an investigator. You know what, they're probably starting to become aware that I'm here. Maybe they don't know what this is about, but they're starting to notice me. So I am going to start giving them some distance. I may decide to maybe even cut it off for now, so that when they think and they look back and they're like, "Where's that car?" You know what? Maybe I was overthinking it. I'm not being followed. Like, it was just maybe the car had the same route as me, and then you kind of create this illusion through the process. So surveillance in itself, it's an art. It's not
It's an
something
art.
that
I was
it's
just
an
about to
it's an
say that.
art. Yeah,
It's
it's
an
an art.
art.
You can't just go out and just follow somebody like you would see in the movies where like the car's driving here and you're like a car right behind and you're following them like this. No, you're gonna get caught like the second they get to the stop sign. It's really an art. It's how you pull out of the parking, how you're following them when they change lanes, how you're changing those lanes, and you don't even change. You're using
Mhm.
cover vehicles, you're using concealment vehicles. Even you might even in the nighttime we swap our lights, put them low beams, high beams, signals. We do different things. We kill the lights in certain instances. Like a lot of vehicles, like they'll be fully equipped to kill all the lights, so that if we have somebody, let's say in a dark neighborhood, and they're turning a corner, and we're going to turn the corner with them, they look through the rear view mirror, they're expecting lights to come right behind them. But when you kill the lights and you stop on the corner and you take a peek, what I call the peekaboo technique, and you see them down there, they don't see any lights. All they see is darkness. So it creates the illusion that they're not being followed. So it really is just, it's an art. And that's, I think, the importance of being able to, having to bet your SIU provider or your partner well, is you need to, you need to really see how they're handling the situation. Are they coming to the table and are they giving you solutions rather than problems? Right. And when you come across a problem on a claim, you should be able to pick up the phone, just like you call your attorney and say, "Hey, how do we handle this situation?" And they should be able to build a plan or some sort of strategy to handle it, not just say, "Well, it is what it is. We're just going to have to lay low for a
Wing
couple
it.
of weeks." Yeah. Yeah. It's like, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I like about SIU investigations is like you just like a high. Well, you're getting paid for stalking, which I think a lot of people kind of already do, like on social media, especially females. Um, but it does excite me when you're able to get real footage and able to show to the employers like, hey, this is what's going on. Nothing makes me more happy than bringing evidence and help, and also satisfaction to the client, because at the end of the day they're the ones who are, there's a lot of emotion that go into claims, and of course the costs. There's a lot of costs that go, but can you guys both touch on your um, perspective, whether it's good to spend money on SIU, or what do you guys believe is a great route on, when it comes to spending money with investigations?
I have to tell you, I am a firm believer that you got to spend money to save money. You got to do it. It's a golden rule. And you know, I think surveillance is one of those necessary evils. You're going to have to spend the money because of the result that you're going to get. Um, but you have to do it strategically, kind of like, um, you know what? I'm sorry,
Chris.
Chris. I'm sorry, Chris. Kind of like what Chris said. You have to be strategic as to how you're going to do it, and you have to know sort of like your audience. And in if you know, like in this case, like the way we got burned on this case, we knew that this person was gonna be definitely aware of his surroundings. His wife was going to be there. They were going to know what was going to happen, and they were going to be vigilant as to, like every day, every night, his family, everything. So we were going to give them, space. So we were not going to go out there the very next day with a different company. We were going to give them space. We were going to let it cool off, and we were going to just, go on as give him his space, give him, whatever it is that he needed to, because he was really hurt, but we knew he was embellishing. I mean, like, definitely. And it was just the way we were going to approach his claim, and the way we were going to handle it after. So yes, it is a necessary evil. It is something that you have to know strategically how you're going to use it. So definitely, because when you like the way we were talking, before we started the live stream, like when surveillance, when you hit, it's like you hit the jackpot. It is, like, once, you catch them doing something, like, for example, we've had some where, like, they go into the doctor's office, with their walker, and they're going really slow, and they're doing, like barely just hobbling into the doctor's office, and then they hobble back out, and then they get in their car, and then once they go shopping, and then they just kind of, they come out of their car, out of their store, and they're doing everything, just like normal people. That is priceless. Once you have something like that, and then you can get a couple of days out of something, actions just like that, it's priceless, because you can bring that to an AME or a QME, because the QME just said, oh, this person is really hurt, and you have a QME that's rating, 20, 30, 40%, and you're in the hole for that much money. And you can bring this surveillance video to these doctors, or even to a judge, because then you're going to have a report that's going to tell you, we're going to leave it to the trier of facts, because the doctor is going to be spineless. It's going to tell you, I can make a determination because they don't want to, and then they're going to leave it to the judge to make a decision. You have a video that's showing that this person is not hurt. So there is where it's super, super important that you have that evidence that's going to support your instinct to tell you that you're right, and that this person, is the fraud in the system. that's when it's really important to have it. And yes, it is worth paying for it.
I'm biased when it comes to obviously answering this question. Is there a return of investment in engaging SIU?
Yes.
Absolutely, yes. There's 1,000% return of investment.
Yes.
But I will say that, but it does matter in which bucket you place that investment. And when I say bucket, it matters in how you're handling the investigation, because it doesn't always, like, surveillance is great. And I agree 100% with everything Tanya said, but surveillance is not always the best solution on a claim. It may seem like it is, and it's not always the best solution. And this is what makes the difference. Look, there's like 90,000 licensed private investigators in the state of California. And every year, there's probably like 1,000 more that become licensed. I can guarantee you that a good chunk of them could do surveillance. But why would it not be beneficial, right, to just engage somebody and just pay them to do surveillance? Because when it comes to workers' compensation or just in injury claims in the insurance world, you have to consider a couple factors. Workers' compensation is administrative law, and that is hand in hand with substantial medical evidence, right? There has to be medical evidence to support that this injury is industrial, thereby there
Correct.
being coverage, right? Workers' compensation coverage. Well, when things are based on substantial medical evidence, you are going against that medical evidence with your investigative evidence, right? What Tanya was talking about, presenting the surveillance reports and findings to the AME or the IME or the QME so that they can maybe refute, or amend their opinion, and then maybe get somebody off TTD or whatever restrictions or limitations that they have in place. But you have to be very intentional in how you do that. That's when we go back to what we were talking about a couple of minutes ago, which is really looking at the specifics of the claim, and then ultimately, just as a team, determining what do we want to achieve in this claim. Okay, we do have a person that is claiming a right arm injury, and okay, we're considering to do surveillance, and let's just hypothesize that we do get really good surveillance of this person moving their arm, doing all sorts of things. How is that surveillance going to help us ultimately impact the claim? And if the answer is I'm not sure, then maybe it's not the best approach, right?
Correct.
But if the answer is like, well, we have an AME or we have a QME that's saying that this person can't use their right arm, we need to go out and we need to do surveillance to verify whether they actually can or cannot use their arm. And if we find that they are able to use their arm excessively beyond the limitations that they claim over here, then now we can get that QME to, amend the report. And bottom line, placing somebody off TTD that trickles down to PD rating, and that equals $2 savings, right, on a claim. Um, but then once something starts reaching the level of potential fraud components, let's just say, okay, we found this person doing all these things that they supposedly were not able to do. Then there's a lot of things that need to happen from the beginning that becomes, you could still do it later on, but it becomes sometimes a little bit more difficult, such as even taking a statement from the claimant and getting them really specific as to what they can and cannot do, even before they retain counsel. Because once they retain counsel, you could still depose them, but attorneys, especially if you're in LA, they're gonna coach you and they're gonna tell you to, all sorts of things. And I'm sure some of them are seeing this and they would agree inside themselves, even though they won't admit it out externally. That's what they do to their clients, right? They influence them to say certain things that sometimes exacerbate the claim value, and sometimes it doesn't happen, right? It's a little bit of everything. But where I'm going with this is when it comes to prosecuting a claim, when it comes to filing fraud charges against somebody, there's a different level of proof that needs to be met. We now need to prove in a criminal court that this person committed fraud beyond reasonable doubt. Meaning that if the person said, my pain level on this arm is a 7 out of 10, and then you see them lifting, cases of water, setting up a jumper and doing all sorts of things, and you're like, I got you, slam dunk. You said your pain level was a 7 out of 10, but you're doing over there all sorts of work and doing all sorts of things. Definitely not. When it comes to actually prosecuting, did they ever say that they could not lift a box of water? Did they ever say themselves that they could not work at a pumpkin patch? Did they ever say they could not drive? Or did they just simply say my pain level was this? Because pain levels are subjective. What is 7 to you may not be 7 to me, right? And so when it comes to that scale, then that's when it's hard to be able to prove, yes, this person actually was claiming this when it's on a pain scale like that. It has to be very, very specific. Can you walk outside your house? Yes. How long can you stand for? 5 minutes. What happens after 5 minutes? My knees start hurting. Then what happens after that? Well, I have to sit down. Is there any medications that improve your conditions? Yes, if I take Advil. And what does that Advil do? Well, it allows me to stand for 3 more hours. And then what happens after that? I need to take Advil again, right? And you get so specific like that that now you can compare specifically everything that they told you in the surveillance. So when they claim that they had a good day because they took medication, you can refute those claims based on their testimony. And if they claim that that's not accurate, well, did you perjure yourself and lie during the statement, or is the surveillance correct? And it establishes, a higher degree for defense and something that cannot be refuted. And that should always be the goal with any investigation, is handle it from a neutral mindset to try to ultimately verify that, this person is injured. That's honestly, it may sound contradictory, but when we go out and we're investigating a claim, we're trying to confirm that this person is injured. We're not trying to prove fraud against them. We're trying to confirm that they are actually injured, and then we let the facts and the evidence point us in the opposite direction. And then that's when questionable stuff start arising and all this stuff, suspicions, and then it arises from there.
Yeah, you bring up a great point, and all those questions should be asked at deposition. And also, when you're getting the investigation, asking those questions is so important, right? Because I do think um, where people or where claims drops the ball is like, yeah, we got this guy carrying things, but is there any, did he ever state that he cannot do that, right? Which is 100%, that's where the defense is always going to try to get you at.
Is it material? That's what it is. Is it materially relevant and materially impactful to the claim? Did they knowingly and intentionally make this statement for the purpose of defrauding you as the employer, you as the insurance company, for the purpose of getting, claim benefits that they would otherwise not be entitled to? And is the information or the activities that they're doing, is it materially relevant, and is it materially contradictory to what they said? Those are the elements of fraud: knowledge and intent, material misrepresentation that they financially gain or potentially financially gain. And whereas it them, the one that perpetrated the whole fraud scheme. And once you have all those factors met with the evidence, with the supporting stuff and everything, that's when you go to the district attorney's office and file something, and they get charged. Which is, we had one a couple months ago with a city. Obviously, I'm not going to mention the name of the city, but where it was a police officer, and the police officer was prosecuted for insurance fraud, and we handled the investigation. You can probably Google it and put Southern California police officer, prosecuted for insurance fraud, and it'll show up there. And another recent one, literally within maybe 2 3 weeks, for an employer client of us, where the ex-girlfriend came up and gave us some information about this person, and that, combined with statements, combined with surveillance and everything, built a really strong prosecutable case, and the DA just filed charges against that person too. So it does happen. It is California. California, it's kind of a slap on the wrist state. It's kind of frustrating, but the way you maneuver that is you make sure that your investigations are solid, and that you present that in a way that they just can't say no. The evidence is there. The evidence will always speak for itself, louder than any of us can speak. And that honestly should be what is driving this.
Yeah, and I think everybody here agrees that, as well as my clients, that California should amend the rules as to, the workers' comp claims, what people can get away with, the strictness, and what's considered, the penalties. I do think that as a state, we need to switch that over because it makes it very hard for businesses to continue to do business. And because every time, they're just they're getting hit with claims every single day. And I'm sure you, Tanya, you get hit with the most, CT claims on the regular basis.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
But yeah, so we're coming up here to a wrap. The audience, if you guys have any questions or concerns, feel free to drop in your question or comment. As well, if you guys are interested in connecting with Chris for his SIU investigations service, he's amazing. I use him. I use his company, and it's honestly he's helped me out in a lot of my clients' situations, and I'm just very happy to have him on my side. And I know because I've seen his team, they go all in. They're super communicative, which is something that my clients love. And if you guys want to get connected with Tanya, you guys can also follow Tanya. She's on my event page. So both my guests are on the event. But do you guys want to leave the audience or give anything else before we close off?
Go for it, Tanya.
Um, I'm just happy to be here and happy to participate in your live stream. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'll just add.
It's our pleasure,
It's
Tanya.
Yeah, this was great. It was great being here with you, Tanya, and with you, Rocio. And it's always a pleasure, and it's always good to connect and talk about these topics. Um, a lot of people sometimes in the industry treat them as taboo topics because it's something, the F word, right? Fraud. Nobody wants to talk about it. Everybody deals with it.
Yes.
Everybody
Mhm.
experiences it, but nobody wants to talk about it. And it's important. It impacts all of us. We're seeing it now, where like in California, a lot of homeowners getting canceled out of their policies, and you wonder why, right? You're being canceled out of your policy because this is not 100% of what's happening, but a big factor of what's happening is those insurers are getting hit with fraud a lot. And that goes against, budgeting and the P&L and all the stuff that goes on behind a business, the actual dollars to be able to stay in business. And so when they can't stay in business, what do they have to do? They have to pull out. It ultimately
Mhm.
comes down to that. It comes down to the dollars. And fraud is something that impacts the dollars directly. When you are paying out on claims and you do not owe, you're basically giving away money. And it's unfair for the employer, it's unfair for the carriers, it's unfair for the injured workers that are legitimately injured as well, because it ties up resources that they should be entitled to, and they are, but that sometimes things delay because the system is cluttered, right? So the way I see us as an SIU provider is, I don't just see us as coming in and defending the employer and defending the insurance companies and everybody in the claim system, but I see it as also protecting the injured worker, so that they can have a fair system where they, if they're legitimately injured, they can get the care that they need, as they should, because that's what the system was designed for. And then we can pick out the bad players in between, the bad apples, and try to get them out as much as possible, to try to keep the system with high integrity.
Yeah, 100%. Just like you said, it all comes down to the money. Nobody likes to pay more. I mean, no one is ever happy for paying more in insurance, right? Because it's something that you need to have, and God forbid you get a claim, there's an accident, it's there to protect you. But nobody wakes up like, hey, I'm so excited to pay $500 more on my homeowner's personal auto. Everybody wants to pay less. And I think it's something that the state, and the insurance department, they need to redefine it and make sure that it's fair for everybody. But
Mhm.
I'm going to close off, and thank you so much for everybody that joined. Again, you guys, if you want to follow the guests, you guys can follow them. They're on my event page. And as always, I wish you guys, actually, I wish you guys happy holidays. It's two weeks away. 2 weeks from now, it's Christmas. So if I don't speak to anybody, see you guys
Yeah.
beforehand, I wish you guys a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Awesome.